My name is Lauren Vetrano. I am the VP of Advertiser Studies and Insights here at the Cumulus Media Western One Audio Active Group. And today I'm going to be taking you through some highlights from our most recent podcast download report conducted in the fall of last year. And our highlights today will specifically focus on podcast advertising as a means to reach ad-free subscription video viewers and making a case for audio being the ideal platform for video streamers to promote their brands. So to start out, looking at our methodology of the report, the podcast download is conducted twice a year in the spring and the fall, going back to July 2017. We work very closely with our partner, Signal Hill Insights, on the study, and we look at persons 18 plus who have spent at least 1 hour either listening to or watching podcasts within the past week. They cannot be employed in advertising, public relations, marketing, market research, radio, TV, digital, or podcasting industries. And our most recent report, our fall 2025 study, was conducted in October of last year, running from the 8th through the 21st. A look at our terminology and definitions just to set the landscape of who we're going to be looking at. We look at weekly podcast consumers. That's anyone in the study. They had to listen or watch podcasts in the past week for at least an hour. We look at heavy podcast consumers. Those are those people who have listened or watched podcasts for 6 or more hours in the past week. We have podcast watchers, those who have watched podcasts with some kind of video component. And we look at our podcast consumers based on when they started consuming podcasts. So everything from our newcomers who started in the past 12 months to our pioneers who started consuming podcasts 4 or more years ago. And we do touch on distribution platforms in the report. That is where podcasts are available for consumers. For example, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. So we know that TV audiences have been declining over the past few years, and there needs to be some place to find these people. Where can we find these displaced TV audiences? And the answer is with podcasts. So podcast consumers are using video streaming services. They're using them avidly. Here we're asking when was the most recent time, if ever, that they've done these activities. And in the past month, 94%, a huge majority, have used a streaming platform. A video streaming platform, I should say. 86% have used an ad-free streaming platform, and 86% have used an ad-supported video streaming platform. So they are using the streaming platforms, even though we are seeing TV audiences decline. Here we're drilling down into the type of video streaming platform they're using, whether it's ad-free or ad-supported. Again, we're looking at monthly viewership. So have they used these in the past month? Number 1 is Netflix, followed by Amazon Prime, both there in the 80s. 3 of the top 4 video streaming services watched by the weekly consumer is mostly ad-free, so they're not getting those ads on their video streaming. The best place to reach them is through podcasts because they are avid listeners. And our podcast consumers are cord cutters. 1 in 3, 35% of our weekly consumers do not subscribe to pay TV. They're never going to be reached by those linear TV ads. So the best way to reach them is through podcasts because they are listening or watching podcasts on a weekly basis. Podcast consumers spend 2/5 of all of their viewing time with TV, video streaming platforms, etc., with ad-free video. So there is a huge chunk of time that they are not seeing ads in the videos they're consuming. So you really do have to try to reach them through different means, and podcasts really is that great place to do it because they are avid consumers. And the more that they consume podcasts, the more that they're consuming ad-free video streaming. On the left-hand side, we have the weekly podcast consumers in gray, and the dark blue represents the heavy podcast consumers. And again, that's those who have consumed 6 or more hours of podcasts in the past week. And when we look at the hours per week in the past week that they have watched, 11 plus, our heavy consumers are more likely to be an ad-free TV streamer, 17% more likely on that left-hand side of the slide. And on the right, this is average weekly time spent with ad-free TV streaming services, almost 6 hours among the weekly podcast consumer, And we see that really jump to 6.5 hours with heavy consumers. So they're spending 12% more time with ad-free TV streaming services than the weekly podcast consumer. So the more that they're consuming podcasts, the more they're consuming ad-free video streaming services. Screen Engine ASI does a quarterly study where they look at streaming video consumption among Americans. It's about 2,000 people every quarter, so it's a really robust sample. And here we're looking just at the profile of the different segments. So starting on the left, we have our total or Gen Pop, our heavy TV viewers, heavy radio listeners, heavy podcast consumers, subscription video on-demand subscribers, and ad-supported video demand viewers who've watched in the past 3 months. And our subscription video subscribers, they're concentrated among 25 to 64-year-olds, and their profile is very similar to heavy radio listeners and heavy podcast consumers. Compared to TV viewers, the streaming service people, they tend to skew younger, they have more children in the household, they're more likely to be employed. So there's a large gap between audio consumers and video subscription subscribers versus heavy TV viewers. So if you're looking to reach these younger consumers who have children and are looking to spend their money on their large families, you really want to be in audio, radio, or podcasts, because that's going to align with the video on demand subscriber segment. And despite all of this, despite the profile aligning between audio consumers and streamers, we do see that the spend, there's a big disparity. We see the majority of spend going to linear TV. This is done by Kantar and Magellan AI. $1.1 billion in 2025 from January through November of last year. So the bulk of streaming video services going to TV, but there is a huge opportunity for more money to go to podcasts or radio, as the profile really aligns, the habits align, and it's a great place to reach these consumers. So to sum up, podcast advertising reaches heavy users of ad-free subscription video. It's the ideal medium for reaching ad-free streaming audiences. 86%, a huge majority of the weekly podcast consumer audience, has used an ad-free streaming service in the past month. There is strong TV streaming tune-in among weekly podcast consumers. 64% of them spend at least 3 hours per week watching TV programs via ad-free streaming services. Podcast consumers are cord cutters and linear TV ad nevers, so they're never going to be reached by those linear TV ads. 35% of weekly podcast consumers do not have pay TV, and they are not going to see network or cable TV ads. And our key takeaways: advertising on podcasts, that's how marketers can reach this ad-free video streaming audience. Video streamers should lean into audio to promote their brands. The profile is very close when you look at heavy audio consumers and the video streaming audience, and you see a much larger gap in the profile when you compare it to the TV audience. Podcast consumers are avid users of video streaming services. They watch ad-free Netflix and Amazon Prime Video the most. Podcast consumers are cord cutters. A third of them are not subscribing to any pay TV, and they will not be reached by linear TV ads. Podcast consumers spend 41% of their video viewing time watching ad-free platforms. So again, they are not going to be reached by those ad-supported platforms as often. The heavier the podcast listener, the more TV streaming content they are going to consume. And again, according to Screen Engine ASI, the profile of the video streamer really closely aligns with the podcast and radio audience, not linear TV viewers. Cumulus Media Westwood One Audio Active Group is a marketing advisory, and we partner with clients to measure the impact of the entire audio campaign, not just Cumulus Media or Westwood One Investments. And we specialize in audio creative best practices, media planning, strategic allocations in audio, and how we can measure the impact, again, of the entire audio investment. For more, you can visit our blog. There's 2 ways to get there. One on cumulusmedia.com. Down at the bottom of the page, there is a link to the blog. And on Westwood One, there is also a link on the homepage for blog, and that will bring you to our page where you can sign up and subscribe for weekly emails where we release all types of audio stories and case studies on a regular basis. Thank you so much for letting me take you through these highlights from our podcast download report, and the specific highlight in this case on the ad-free video subscription world. Thanks so much.